That's right. That is right. Disclaimer. What's that? Oh, it's that. Check it out. You like these? So do I. So do I. I had to wear them. And why? Because it is an evening Emperor edition of PaleocratDiaries, June 15th, and I'm your boy, the Paleocrat. Ow! Come on! We're gonna rock out today. We are gonna rock out this mic. And why? Because we're pumped. We are pumped up to be Catholic. We are super psyched. Man, that mic is hot. My mic is just in the red. In the red. You gotta do it though. Straight to the dome. Straight to the dome. It's what the show is, right? And we're taking a knee for the Lord, for Christ the King, every single day. Tomorrow, are you psyched about tomorrow, by the way? Yeah, Sacred Heart. Loving it. I'm gonna be serving as a thurifer at Sacred Heart at the TLM there in the morning in Grand Rapids. So if you're in the area, you gotta go. You gotta go. But tonight, we gotta do first things first. We gotta take a knee. Come on now. Don't be a wuss. Don't be a wuss. I dare you to take a knee for Christ the King. I dare you to bring into conformity all of your thoughts, all of your words, all of your deeds, to bring them in conformity to the divine constitution of the visible church, because it's the bride of Christ. Oh, it's true. It is true. They're not going to let you go, right? They're not going to let you go in every direction. And in this crazy world, it's tumultuous, wicked, bad. That's why we here have this deep-rooted commitment, right? 3 things. Never give up. Keep on smiling. And to remember that one day, we too shall die. And we don't know how. We don't know when. It could be some crazy freak thing, you know. Super dangerous, super painful and terrible. And you don't know. So what do? Well, my daughter had a good idea. Rest in peace, Sammy. She said, dream bigger thoughts. Find out what you love. Give it all you've got. And I said, well, that's kind of like why I'm doing, the show right now. It's why I'm doing the show right now. Oh, hung out with my daughter today. Absolutely had a great time. And we go out now and again, right? We got daddy-daughter days, daddy-daughter nights. And we went and we got some food. First we got some food. Then we went and she got some stuff, man. She got some fingernails, some of these fake fingernails. And your boy got these mega dope glasses. It's true. I mean, look at these buggers. Come on, man. Come on. You know what's crazy? It's like the picture at the beginning of the show, right? The straight to the dome one. I saw them, and right away, I'm like, I've got to have it. Speaking of got to have it, check this out. So we're doing this Fat Shame to Fitness. This is just kind of a PSA in general, because we're going to get to the show. So here's the thing. PSA. We're doing a Fat Shame to Fitness. So if you are, in fact, a fat slob and you're sick and tired of that, and you're really sick of it, and you don't want to be that way anymore, and you've tried all sorts of nonsense, right? All sorts of restrictive diets, all sorts of fasting, and you've been stuck in that, going up, overeating like crazy, and then feeling guilty about it, and then purging all of it, right? And then binging again. So you're in that whole binge, guilt, and purge sequence, and it's just going over and over like Groundhog Day in your life. It's no longer going like Groundhog Day in my life. And if you would like to join me, okay, just my personal thing, if you would like to join that, it's totally free. You can do it over on Telegram. And if you're not on Telegram, you're literally bonkers. You are bonkers. We have live chats every day over there, right? So imagine a couple hours, hour and a half, 2 hours that I'm on there every single day, talking with the people, talking with the folks, having a good time. We have a prayer chain over there. We've got a book club over there going through Catholic controversy, St. Francis de Sales. On top of that, over 300, I bet at this point, it's like 400 prayer requests submitted to our prayer chain. We've got an all-girls group called the Luna Pack. If you're a lady and you want to learn about apologetics, I'm going to be doing apologetics over there. They've invited me in. I'm the kind of the creator of this. so they're like, yeah, you can come on in and to learn apologetics in a way that is easy, it's applicable, and you're not going to be drowned out by a bunch of dudes who have a bunch of isms and Asians and ologies and onomies that they're throwing around left and right, because they can drown you out. You know what I mean? And so we're not going to do that. So we've got that. We've got all sorts of awesomeness going on, and Fat Shame to Fitness is one of them. It's a private, discreet group, and the rules are simple. Eat only when you're physically hungry. Know the reason why you're standing in front of that fridge. Are you bored? Are you looking for comfort? If so, you're looking in all the wrong places. And it's one of those things that every time you're hungry like that, but you're not physically hungry, you're not really hungry, you just, wanted to keep up the pace for, slobdom. Like, if that's what you're doing, that's one of those ding dong, time to pray. Time to pray. That's the rule. So you only eat when you're hungry. You only eat until you're full. And we have tips and tricks on how to learn this and how to do that. And I did that with my daughter today and ate half the food I normally would eat. And it was awesome. Totally content, loved every bit. And I had stuff to bring home, including, by the way, this is fried ice cream. Okay, so I've got that fried ice cream going on here, and I'm going to take little bites throughout the show to show you that you can do it. That you can do it. I'm intentionally eating food that's not necessarily good for me. I really am. Like, I'm being really, to show you that you can eat foods that are not what I would like to eat forever, but foods that, if it doesn't matter, if you just simply eat when you're hungry and only eat till you're full, and you pray in between, conceptualizing that in-between phase as fasting and not an open invitation to put those grubby sausage finger paws into a box of Captain Crunch, then you're going to lose weight. That's PSA. PSA is over. All right, real quick. I'm not going to do too much about the SAINTMAKER other than to say thank you to all those people who have gone and you've purchased it. It's one of the ways you can support the show. Of course, the other way is going to Patreon. You can find PaleocratDiaries there, and we got different programs and stuff. Really, it's just what do you want to support? We do everything's for free. Okay, we do tons and tons of stuff. In fact, somebody told me out on the West Coast, a friend named Michael, really cool chick. She's an amazing artist, and she was talking to me and asking, "How do you do this? How do you make money?" She felt badly. Her and her husband both are like, "Look, there's so much content every single day. You are cranking out content like a fiend. And yet, how do you benefit from that?" And I said, by you praying for me, by you being the best Catholic you can be, the best wife or husband, the best parent or child or just faithful Catholic that you can possibly be, and that we can connect in a really profound way, not just a way that's in comment sections. And so, but one of the ways, other than Patreon, and of course PayPal for one-time donations, stuff like that, you can do that. But other than that, right, buying a SAINTMAKER. Right? There's a certain amount that we get from that. It's not huge, but it's helpful. And the SAINTMAKER is really helpful. And so to learn all the ways that the SAINTMAKER is helpful, here's the promo for them. And if you've already seen this promo, you already have the SAINTMAKER, you better go get yourself a drink. I don't care what you drink right now. It's pretty late. You might not want coffee. I'm done. I got myself a Coke Zero, though, so I am going to drink a little bit of that. And we'll be back in just a moment, right after this promo here. And we're going to be talking about mystics and messiahs. So we'll be right back. Can a personal planner really make you a saint? Not by itself. But in our day and age of addictive apps and glowing screens, we're bombarded by constant distraction. And our quest for sainthood often takes a backseat. The SAINTMAKER is the first high-performance planner for the spiritual life, made by faithful Catholics for faithful Catholics. It's a work of genius, really, fusing the wisdom of the saints with the science of personal productivity. It's rigorous, but sainthood is tough, and most of us need help organizing our time, our work, our leisure, and our devotion, because that can help you become a saint. The SAINTMAKER is elegant, fits in your purse or briefcase, and is a perfect companion for your missal, Bible, or rosary. Published 4 times per year, each season includes daily planning pages, feast days, and devotions for both forms of the liturgical calendar, goal-setting pages, confession journals, and more. It's why the SAINTMAKER is used by hardworking Catholics, like CEO of Sock Religious Scott Williams, best-selling author Sam Guzman, YouTubers like Amber Schneider, a Catholic wife Dina Barca, and Brian Holdsworth, and priests like Father Corey Stitcha. Try the SAINTMAKER out, and if you decide that it's not for you, you can send it back for a full refund within 90 days. So go right now. Find your life planner at thesaintmaker.com. Quantities are limited though, so head on over to thesaintmaker.com to order yours and to start your SAINTMAKER journey today. You got to do it. You got to do it. SAINTMAKER.com/PaleocratDiaries, promo code in the description below. And there we go. Look at that. That is the Paleocrat Diaries alert system. I got to keep the shades on for this. This is a powerful moment because it is the moment that all of the Paleocrats, the freaks and the geeks all around the world, all the pen pals, all those little wolves and the people putting putting little symbols and emojis in the comment section. And thank you, by the way. Like, comment, share, subscribe. All them buggers right now, they're racing into their rooms and they're grabbing their shofars. They're grabbing their electric guitars. They're grabbing the ukulele. Maybe not a ukulele. They're grabbing a ukulele, whatever. Xylophones, anything in the world. They're grabbing them things, man. Grabbing that Casio keyboard, and they are rocking out right now, letting all their neighbors know, their friends, their enemies, their classmates and coworkers, that your boy, the Kaiser, Jeremiah Bannister, is on the air, and we're about to enter the octagon of history. We're about to enter into mystics and messiahs, cults and new religions in American history. And today, what are we talking about? Talking about some voodoo. Straight up, we're talking voodoo. I'm not lying. We're talking voodoo and hoodoo and the voodoo in the United States of America. Because it's got a crazy past and lessons to learn for those folks like us who happen to be, against cults and stuff. So we've got to be real good about this. We got to resolve right now. Say that act of faith. Say that act of contrition. Right? And pray for those around you. Do it. Pray hard. No more being ashamed. No more being afraid. No more hiding that light under a bushel. Oh no. Oh no. We're not doing that anymore. We are becoming aglow. We are all sorts of lit up and on fire. But we are refraining from enthusiasms. That's true. It's totally true. So make sure right now, I'm dead serious. If you're on Twitter, you're on Facebook, you're on Instagram, if you're over there, wherever you happen to be, let people know. Share the link. Share them, right? And more than that, be that person, right? Be that person who's going to go and be a living epistle, shining in a dark world. It's tumultuous. It's wicked bad. Heresies and cults and esoteric nonsense all around us. And God made us for a time just like this. He made me. He made you. He made us just for this time. And we got to do what we got to do. So pray hard, and, pray hard. It's what you got to do. It's what we've got to do, isn't it? It's what we've got to do. All right. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to read. I'm not going to be able to read this. I'm going to be struggling so bad. Oh, speaking of struggling bad, my glasses. Holy cow. Man, oh, day. Might need to get my wife in here. Be a good excuse to be like, yo, baby, get in here and clean my glasses for me. She's got that little spritz, though. She knows where that is. She's able to take care of that business. Yeah. So, all right, let me see here. Yeah. All right. So, real quick. I'm going to be eating throughout the show. Again, I'm going to be mukbanging in your face. It's totally true. Because I am showing you that it's possible. It's a matter of the will. It's a matter of the will. I've got this amazing ice cream next to me. I've only taken one bite. It is delicious, by the way. I absolutely love it. I even saved the cherry in there. I liked it so much that even when it was melted on the plate, just poured it into a styrofoam thing, brought it home, threw it in the freezer, said, I'm going to eat in front of people's faces tonight and lose weight all the while. Super, super psyched about that. So tonight's not going to be as long of a show, I don't think. We'll find out. So, all right, starting with voodoo here, because we were talking about Nation of Islam, right? We kind of went back and forth for a second. All right, went back and forth, talked about some white cultists, then some black cultists, then some white cultists, and now we're black. We're black here. We're black here, guys. Yeah, we're back here, right, to the history of black gods and black messiahs, and in this case, religions, folk myths and legends and lore, magic, all sorts of stuff, claims of human sacrifice. It's crazy. It's crazy. In seeking to understand the religious upsurge among African Americans, whites relied on long-established racist caricature, but with a pernicious new element, namely the notion of voodoo. Reference to voodooism pervaded official reaction to the new black Islams. I mean, you got to imagine, right away, people are like, oh man, yeah, Nation of Islam's totally voodoo. It's not voodoo. It's actually on like a way different side of a spectrum. But that was the kind of thing going on. In 1937, a prestigious American Journal of Sociology publication had a scholarly account of black Muslim origins in Detroit. And that's where there's a lot of that Nation of Islam, a lot of black nationalism, and various kinds of separatism and extremism going on over there in Detroit. But this publication, scholarly by the way, reputable, had a bizarre title: The Voodoo Cult Among Black Migrants in Detroit. And it discussed, quote, the Nation of Islam, usually known as the Voodoo Cult, end quote. No, it was not. Well, it was. It's one of those things, right? I'll put this up here, by the way. I love you guys. I love you. I normally talk about people, but I saw 87 Weber Drex and said, no, I don't think so. Or is it Weber Drex? I don't know. Whatever. Running on Kaiser Standard Time is always, there's no other time. What are you talking about? I'll keep that on for a little bit. Okay. If you want to connect with me tonight, you got to put at the meaning of Catholic, and that will pop up. Let me see if anybody's done it. There we go. Kevin did it right here. You can see the orange square. That makes it very easy for me to see. A less suitable parallel could scarcely be imagined, given that voodoo and Islam are located at opposite ends of the religious spectrum in terms of their attitude to divinity and the nature of religious practice. One of those things that to keep in mind is that for Nation of Islam, they don't believe in spirits. They call them spooks. They call people like us spooks for believing in a soul, believing in a spirit, believing in a heavenly realm. They're, as I said before, they're similar to Mormons in that way. They have a certain kind of materialism. Voodoo certainly existed, right, in the sense of African-derived rituals and folk beliefs that were strong in the Caribbean and the American Deep South. But a sharp line has to be drawn between the real religious practice, now conventionally referred to as voodoo or vodun, and the farrago of myths and legends called voodoo that became a media commonplace. So what we're going to find in this, right, what we're going to find in this particular episode is problems that arise with anti-cult movements, right? That's not to vindicate, nothing here to vindicate. In fact, he might even be a little soft on it. I'm not, right? It's wicked, bad, dumb. I've watched a number of documentaries on voodoo over the years and hoodoo. And to say but the idea being that what lessons can we actually learn from this? Because sometimes we fall prey, and I hope that you will see in this, I hope that you will see our community too, right? Some of the things that we fall prey to, that later on we should be more careful. Because as time goes by and more information comes out, especially about these new groups, that we may in fact be eating a lot of crow. We'll be among the democracy of the dead by that point. But that's even worse in a way, because now we're stuck with that. I'd rather be stuck with being accurate. This voodoo myth provided a frame through which all new African American religions were interpreted and distorted. If it did not exist, a homicidal American voodoo cult would have to be invented, and so, under media influence, it was. Fake news has been going on for a very long time. The idea that oh yeah, well, we don't have any, it's just fake news is like a recent thing. We need to get back to that golden era. What golden era are you talking about? What golden era are you talking about? Look, that's what I got my degree in, journalism and mass comm, minor in political science. I just happen to really like talking about enthusiasms. That's why I study them the way that I do. I do it journalistically, as well as to do in the realm of apologetics, which is something I just happen to really enjoy. And I've studied for many years, but I don't have my degree in that, right? But to document these things, and I can tell you right now, the idea of a golden age of journalism, it's like, it's phony baloney. It is. I mean, you may have had a time where there were certain restraints, right? Things that people generally subscribe to, but a lot of that was strictly cultural. You still had the same problems at play. Writers had interests. Even the safeguards that they put in place to kind of hedge those interests in were kind of phony, like getting both sides of a story. What are you talking about, both sides? There's multiple sides. And in fact, if you do both sides of a story, most of the time, there are groups, especially in America, much bigger than those who maintain positions like ours, which is why ours oftentimes has to find some kind of a refuge in its own publication. You had a guy, William Seabrook, in 1928. It was a pivotal year, in fact. Seabrook's book, The Magic Island, set the tone for all later writings on voodoo. The author, a former features writer for the Hearst Syndicate, oh, that's great, yeah, was by far the most important occult popularizer of the interwar years and did much to shape American perceptions of witchcraft. We've talked about this before, how it's not just simply some scholarly thing. A lot of times, the people that form ideas about these esoteric occult groups, they're in fact fiction writers. We talked about Lovecraft being one of them. There are multiple others. Of course, you have L. Ron Hubbard. He'd be one who was intimately involved, in fact. Satanism and parapsychology as well, the perceptions of them. So the perceptions, it wasn't just witchcraft, Satanism, parapsychology, as well as voodoo. He introduced the mass American audience to such technical terms as Papa Loy, or Mama Loy, the priest, that is, Papa Roy, and Mama Roy. And the Humfert, I don't know if that's the proper way to pronounce it, right? Mystery house or temple. And his book introduced the word zombie. Think about it. How weird is that, by the way? His book, did you know that? Did you know the magic island? That's where we get this from? That doesn't sound too magical. I mean, I guess in one way, you say, well, but aren't zombies, like we don't know what creates that. Well, how did it begin, right? Seabrook quoted extensively from voodoo rituals, describing ceremonies that are not only bloody, but also involve a powerful kind of sexuality, with elements of perversion and even doing things with animals, right? This is not something you want your kids to read. You're not buying this for little Timmy. You're not buying this for little Sally. You're not, no. This is, if you buy it, you say, oh, this looks pretty good. This is Magic Island. I'd be like, no, do not open that. Don't open that book. What if the cover of Magic Island had like lollipops and lemon drops and hot air balloons and such? Little cartoon dinosaurs. People open it up and like, oh my gosh. Yeah. Haitians were presented as, quote, blood-maddened, sex-maddened, God-maddened people. These accounts of voodoo ritual are laden with all sort of adult themes, right? It's kind of like the word prawn, but just, a little bit different ordering of the letters with that. All kinds of nasty, grody themes with lots of skin that could scarcely have appeared in any mainstream book. So this kind of thing, you'd never see it in a mainstream book. We already know, right? We already know that when it comes to books that are considered scholarly or attempting to portray certain groups, that you'll see that sort of thing. I grew up in National Geographic all over the place, right? I remember. It was kind of like this, but worse. Like, this is way worse. And it definitely wouldn't have been a mainstream book of those years, no doubt about it, if the author had not the excuse of describing primitive rituals. So for him, it wasn't just simply a scholarly thing. He was allegedly describing rituals that were really bizarre from a different place that were finding their way in America. And because of that, was given a certain kind of license, and in that regard, had a sort of suspended disbelief. Yeah. It remains open. A large portion of the book concerns the specialized culte des morts, with its themes of fear, death, and bloodshed, of death curses, zombies, and animal sacrifices. When you hear the word voodoo, or you hear the word hoodoo, what images come to your mind? And this is one of those things where we have to ask ourselves sometimes, where do these images come from? Why do we have these images in our mind when we hear something? There's a part of a movie. It's not. I would not encourage anybody to watch this. Right? I've done film criticism, and one of the films early on in that I watched was Wild at Heart. Right? And in Wild at Heart, there's a part in there where the actor, one of the actors, is talking about a dog and barking. and saying that there's an image, right, that comes into the mind, even just hearing "Ruff" or "oh," that kind of thing. But that image, you may have never seen that person's dog. That person, in fact, might not even have a dog. And that, but that an image pops up in your mind, right? It's created by the part of your brain with imagination, in fact. And you come up with that, and that image, a lot of times, is a caricature. Like, for example, if I say the word heart, what is the first image that comes to mind? Is it anything like an emoji heart, right? The heart that people have drawn for a very long time. Mine would be similar to that, except it would be more along the lines of the hearts on Siamese Dreams. Siamese Dream by Smashing Pumpkins, right? Kind of had an interesting heart shape, and I've always liked that. But the idea is that's not what a real heart looks like. And that's kind of the way that it is when we talk about groups that we've heard things about, or we've seen things in movies, for example, and yet, we have never studied them accurately. We've never even critically asked ourselves, where do these ideas come from regarding this group? And that's true of across the board, right? So there's people, how many people have you met in your life that have ideas about Catholicism that make you just shake your head? You're like, where in the world did you get this? Where did you ever hear that we do that? Where'd you hear that? It remains open to debate whether he was accurately describing Haitian realities. I think that's a downplay of this. That, yeah, okay, so it's open to debate, meaning there are people who say, oh yeah, I think that there's actually some merit to this. So again, that's a way of kind of glossing over something. And you're like, what'd you just say? Like, there might be a little bit. Themes of fear and death and bloodshed, death curses, zombies, animal sacrifice. Holy cow, homie. Open to debate. Or if he was projecting his own admittedly Gothic obsessions. And why do we say that? Because Seabrook's autobiography is quite frank, in fact, about this. He had a long-standing fascination with, quote, the foulest, most absurd, and darkest phases of the so-called occult. The moment that you get into the world where you use the qualifier so-called in front of the word occult, you know that this guy's in. This guy's got himself some kind of crazy, gross, nasty sickness and a fascination for the occult. And the scandal followed, right? A scandal followed when his 1931 book called Jungle Ways, if you can only imagine what that's about, he admitted to having experimented personally with, get this, dun, 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 cannibalism. So this cat, yeah, okay, is he in or what, right? Is he in? Is he down? But does that give a little bit of maybe some credibility that he's willing to go to figure this stuff out? That's why there's an open debate. And so often in the history of anti-cult exposés, the more outrageous charges may tell us more about the observers than the conditions on which they are supposedly reporting. I think that's true generally. I think that the people that we choose, most journalists and most people reporting, the kind of quotes that they select, the kind of details that they choose, it really does come down to that. I've mentioned before the difference of, there's a guy, two different journalists, I think, in Russia, years and years and years ago, USSR, if I remember right. Right? Might be wrong, right? But the idea was two different entities, two different reporters, two different worldviews at play, describing the exact same scene. Dramatically different. You wouldn't even think that you're talking about the exact same scene. They were standing not far from each other, writing about what was happening, and coming to wildly different descriptions, explanations, justifications. The people they quoted were coming from different angles. The way that they emphasized that in the stack, right? Putting stuff at the top, the inverted pyramid that says you put the weightier material, the more significant stuff at the top. We live in a clown world that's inversed that. That's why you have to go to the bottom of articles now in order to see, oh, this study about this really important topic that all of us are addressing in our lives. that study is garbage. There's like 10 people, no controls. Yeah, that sort of thing. But to sit there and say, people make a decision on that. And that says more about the person than it does about the story sometimes, which is why it's actually good to get, when you're doing work like mine, it's in fact not just good, it's essential for me as someone reporting and talking about issues like these, to be able to read from multiple perspectives. I get criticized sometimes for that. I get criticized because they're like, man, you seem to tolerate a lot of different stuff, and you're citing books that are written by Catholics. For one, I'd like it if Catholics wrote better books about certain topics. That's number one. And maybe that's something that I should do. Right? I'm not just criticizing. Maybe it's something, honest to goodness, that I should do. At the same time, it's okay for people, everyday folks, to be in the bubble. That's normal anyway, right? You're going to generally surround yourself with the like, right? What you like, what is similar to you. But for people who are in a position to be reporting on something, the more that they become activist-oriented or beholden to a group or beholden to an ideology, you better really hope, if they're trying to just give you what's a fact on the ground and not their personal perspective on that you're going to need to make sure that that person, that source you're using, is not just simply relying on their own devices, the chariots and horsemen of their own mind and ideology. It's important. In 1937, Literary Digest reported on the struggle of Cuban authorities to eradicate a, quote, cult practicing kidnapping and human sacrifice. Imagine reading that. We have similar things, and I can't use the phrases, but it has to do with something that you eat and a kind of fence with a door. In Italian food, it's like really popular in New York. And other things where it gets wrapped up, where you hear not that the core idea of these things would be wrong, not that there's not evidence that there's some kind of weirdness and foul play happening here, but the way that those stories sometimes go off into wild directions. You see this with the criticisms of toy boxes in the 1980s. The idea that, that He-Man toy of yours or those Muscle Men figures, that them buggers gotta go, right? And that they've got to go because you may have totally legit and fair criticisms of things like, for example, certain role-play games. At the time, Dungeons & Dragons was topping the list. But to see how it spirals out, to see how all of a sudden it turns into the Smurfs being some kind of weird, sex cult kind of thing. I mean, it's just bizarre. And that they were zombies because they're blue. I mean, just bizarre. But it affected people so much that people went home and they ripped those little Smurf toys out of the hands of their kids and grandkids and threw them in the fire. I'm not even joking about that. You can actually watch the video, the interview. There's an interview online where they're talking about it. It's not called Tumult in the Toy Box, Turmoil in the Toy Box. It's a there's a long interview about that. Some dude's like, He-Man has more power than Jesus Christ. What? What are you talking about? Kids just want the power. They don't care about God anymore. Dude, I was going to Sunday school and going to church and doing plays at the church and doing it. For being 6 years old, man, I was totally active like crazy. But I also liked playing with He-Man toys. I thought it was cool to have a sword. Anyway, the only point is, not to drudge up that past. I'm still mad about it. I want to take it out on that guy one day. I do. I want to talk to him. Tell him he's a real scumbag. You're a real scumbag, homie. But what would you do hearing a Literary Digest talking about a cult practicing kidnapping and human sacrifice, like in the 80s with the Satanic Panic, right? Though apparently the practices described are Santeria, the rituals are identified totally with Haitian voodoo. The article claimed that Haitians practice snake worship, quote, with dancing and sexual orgies. But for generations, rites centered around a sacrifice of a white child known in the ceremonies as the goat without horns. Stupefied with drugs, the sacrificial victim was killed and parts of its dismembered body given to worshipers who believed its virtue purified them, end quote. 1937. 1937, Literary Digest. If you were reading something like that, right? And you're already in the context of outrageous racism. Outrageous. Totally unjustifiable kinds of beliefs regarding race, right? Regarding segregation and the like. That says, look, you're taking this way too far. This is now racial idolatry in that way. It's one thing to be proud of your ancestors. It's another thing to be idolatrous regarding your race, into that blood magic. And so the thing is, what would you do if you're sitting there and you're already spooked out about all the black people who moved to town or all the Haitians that migrated, and you're like, oh my gosh, get the kids inside right now. Why? Because they're doing sacrifices. Those were actually people. And this is something to just always keep in mind. It's easy when we separate people from Haitian. When you think Haitian, is the first thing you think of person, or is the first thing you think of Haiti? Like a geographical place, like on a map. They're talking about people. Maybe people who do bizarre things, but what do we say about the people up the road, all the white people over in Pensacola, all the white people over in Christian Science, all the white people of the I Am movement, all the white people of Toronto Blessing? What do we say about that? People are slithering on the ground like snakes. We're trying to find something like, explanations for this that are way different. Now, we may say there's some hypnotism involved. There's like hypnotism or maybe some drugs in the vents. We don't know. Wicked bad spirits, no doubt, right? All sorts of nonsense going on there. But this is an elaborate thing. Goat without horns, stupefied with drugs, sacrificial victim killed, parts dismembered, given to worshipers, and that they believe that its virtue will purify them. So there's dangling around some body parts of some dismembered white kid. Holy cow, man. The notion that the sacrificed child should be white was a recent embellishment. So that was so it's going through all these changes all the time. There's also an individual who wrote of the zombie, a figure raised from the dead by a voodoo priest to do his bidding. So there we go. It wasn't just, like we see a lot of zombie stuff now, and the stuff that we talk about a lot of times now that have to do with zombies, it's more like some kind of, a pandemic, right? Some kind of bacteria, some kind of virus that's escaped from a lab somewhere, that sort of a thing. Right? Or there's a mystery. You don't really know. But the idea, if you dropped in there at the end, right, I don't think they're ever going to reveal it ever. It's kind of the intention of The Walking Dead to never do that. They're pretty strict about it. To say the origin story, they always want to leave that kind of a mystery. But to say, what if we got to the end of that, and it was like, oh, and how did it start? And you got some voodoo priest. We'd all be like, what? It'd be real bad. It'd be real bad. But it made the religion stronger even than death. Zombies became a recurring element in popular culture depictions of voodoo. In horror films like White Zombie, I wonder if that's actually connected. I didn't even think about that, like with the band. I don't know where White Zombie, the name of the band, came from. Right? And its many imitators, all of which drew ultimately from Seabrook. So they're all going back. All these movies, all these films, all of these books, they're all going back to Seabrook. Mr. I ate human flesh guy in America. The decade after 1936 brought B-movies like Revolt of the Zombies in 1936, King of the Zombies, 1941, Revenge of the Zombies, 1943, and I think the should have been in the title. Imagine it's all spelled out. And Voodoo Devil Drums. Voodoo Devil Drums, 1944. And Voodoo Man. Voodoo Man, imagine that kid. It's like Bible Man, but voodoo. I don't know. I don't want to bust the chops of Bible Man. I mean, that's like, what is his name? From Charles in Charge, dude. I can't rip on that guy. The show is bad, though, isn't it? I'm kind of. I'm trying to be nice, man, because that guy, I'd like to talk to him one day. I think it'd be kind of fun. There was also The more serious treatment in Val Lewton's brooding and atmospheric 1943 film, I Walked with a Zombie, with its knowledgeable depictions of voodoo rituals. So you eventually had a more serious film. And the more serious film is tucked within a whole bunch of other films that are not nearly as serious. And all the not serious films are harkening back, of course, to Seabrook. Cannibal guy into the, so-called occult. So that dude. But let me ask you, which one do you think most people would be interested in? What do you think would have a greater influence on the imaginations of individuals, right? The ideas that immediately come to mind when they hear the word voodoo. Again, just like if I say the word heart, if I say the word Haiti, if I say roof or meow, what image comes to mind? That kind of a thing. What would come to mind? Do you think that it would be the one that's more a realistic depiction? In fact, I almost want to watch that I Walked with a Zombie just to see how they portrayed it back in 1943. As I said, I've watched numerous documentaries, even for the preparation for this when I first got the book. Not until the 1950s did more serious and critical accounts appear, which treated voodoo as an authentic religion rooted in Africa. So it wasn't just, it's like, I wonder what he means by authentic, right? What do you mean by that? It's authentic. It's, it's like kind of like saying, well, there's authentic brands of like Satanism, right? Where they don't deny the idea of the devil, right? Is that more authentic? I think devils are playing all of it. They're authentically demonic. However diabolical the stereotype of Haitian voodoo, at least it took place on foreign shores. During the 1920s and 1930s, however, the voodoo stereotype was increasingly imported into the United States. So originally it was like the ethnographs, right? The world travelers, that sort of thing. But now we're talking about like in your backyard, which is going to play right into it because it's already set the stage. It's already set the tone. And so you may now they're coming to near a neighborhood near you, and you're going, oh my gosh. Through the 19th century, it was commonly acknowledged that rural blacks, like their white neighbors, had well-developed magical traditions, together with a body of supernatural folklore. Totally true. Totally true. We downplay sometimes. Lots of white people will downplay, right? The kind of magical traditions and folklore. Pagans get upset about it. Pagans do. They get all sorts of upset. And they're like, look, this is what was really going on. My beliefs can be traced, at least by extension, going back and back and back. And they've got examples of this, right? Together with a body of supernatural folklore. These ideas were known by various names, including Hoodoo. But in 1893, so we're going back even further, a classic study of Black Missouri folk tales reminiscent of Uncle Remus used the title Voodoo Tales, although there was no suggestion of any pagan worship or ritual magic. So, even down, you're talking in Missouri. You're talking the folk tales in Missouri at that time, and they named it Voodoo Tales, but there wasn't any suggestion of certain things. And even the stuff that we see now has to accept adaptation. It's kind of like saying Chinese food a little. And I know it's a weird comparison, but Chinese food. You go, hey, with Chinese food, it is American as apple pie. If you go and you show a Chinese person, say, look, do you guys really love those fortune cookies? They'll be like, what? What are you talking about? And then you're like, try this thing. And you're like, throw it on the ground. Why are you eating cardboard for? What are you eating those really crunchy things? Is it going to crack your teeth? What's wrong with you? Or what's up with that deep fried, super lathered in syrupy, sugary goodness that we know as like honey chicken or coconut shrimp? Even chop suey. Chop suey, right? Totally an American adaptation. It was stolen. It's kind of a funny, I know it's an aside, but I'm going to say it. Forgive me. The transcript's going to be hilarious for the show. So the idea is there was this dude, this Asian guy, and he was making this soup, and this white dude came up and stole it. And he grabbed it, and he grabbed his soup. It smelled good, and he was hungry, and so he just ran up and grabbed the guy's soup and walked off. And it was, this Asian dude is being reported on, and they would use the way that you'd pronounce words. So he called him Melican Man. The Melican Man stole me choppy sue. Yeah, that's how it started. Melican Man stole me choppy sue. And now we got chop suey. Right? So these ideas of where stuff came from. So, you should appreciate the American tale known as Chinese food. It's true. And it's the same thing, the development over time with religions. And sometimes when we get to the real weird ones that meet in hen houses and stuff, it gets really tough to distinguish between what's a development, what's changed. Has it gotten better? Has it gotten worse? What's the interplay with the unfortunate stereotypes and mischaracterizations that surrounded it for a long time? The inability for us, even let's say it's good-hearted, good-willed. You're not intending anything bad, but you just simply don't know about it because it's on foreign shores. It's kind of obscured because it's occultic, right? And so in that sense, it's obscured. And people generally don't have very good media literacy, so they're reading something and they're not meaning anything bad, but it's a mishmash. It's a mishmash of fact and fiction all around. What interplay did that have? Accompanied with, in tandem with, the fiction, whether in film or in book form, in popular culture, what is the interplay of that? And how do we get back to roots, right? From the 1850s, it says the closest American parallel to Haitian voodoo was found in Louisiana, especially New Orleans. From the 1850s onward, there were also sporadic rumors and panics concerning the kidnapping and murder of children and the sacrifice of the goat without horns. This does not mean that the charges were objectively true, any more than allegations in northern cities about atrocities committed by, remember, Catholic priests. If you remember, the biggest and the most pervasive, right, expansive of all anti-cult movements in the history of the United States was against the Catholic Church. And there's all sorts of things that people, hold on a second. Let's see. Yeah, you guys can go ahead and drop USMC Survivalist. Yo, bro, you're a scumbag. Conversational what? Mortal sin? This is a community show. It's a talk show, you weirdo. If you want a boring show, go somewhere else, dude. Turn the channel, you weirdo. You're not doing good at surviving, dude. You're finding yourself wrapped up in all sorts of stuff. What's the point of that? There's like a million channels. I'm dead serious, dude. You're a scumbag, homie. Go start your own channel. Turn the channel. And if there's a mod in there, just drop the guy like he's hot. I'm dead serious, man. Just get rid of him all the way. If he's down with watching other programs on this channel, tough luck for him. I'll take the heat for it. Let people know. I put my stamp of approval on it. Bwam. Done. Get him out. I'm dead serious, man. What a weirdo sicko. What a weirdo sicko, man. Put some soap in that mouth. Yeah, is he still in there? You guys do a good job getting rid of him. Where is he? USMC so-and-so. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where he is anymore. Yeah. I'm wondering if somebody banned the dude. Yeah. But that's what I said. I'm like, look, man, it cracks me up, man. I don't want to go too far in this. Look, it's a free show. We're going through something that's scholarly, and we're having a really good time. Again, if you prefer shows that are your attention span of about 2 or 3 minutes, and I'm giving you, the benefit of the doubt that you're not like the vast majority of people that give it about 15 seconds before they get distracted by the glitter and glow of the recommended viewing on the sidebar, then, if that's you, then bugger off, homie. Find another place. You got the wrong guy barking up the wrong tree. It's true. It's totally true. Yeah. Yeah, what a whack job. So, okay. From the 1850s onward, there were also sporadic rumors of panics, of course, to kidnap kids, the goat without horns. It does not mean that the charges were objectively true, of course, right? But it was no more than with Catholics. Because Catholics, they talked about the kidnapping of priests, the kidnapping of nuns, the kidnapping of monks, the kind of weird sexual behaviors and orgies that were going on inside of monasteries and convents, the kind of ritual magic that goes on. They were talking about, in fact, you can kind of see some of that still floating around in certain circles within Catholicism, strangely enough. But they're also prone to the same kind of temperament and tendencies, oftentimes quoting the exact same people, the exact same authorities as these weirdos in this book. It's tragic, terribly unfortunate. Over the next 3 decades, accounts of voodoo in New Orleans produced little evidence. So it got to the point. It got to the point where you have these folks that they're saying all these terrible things. They accused certain groups, Haitians that were in town. They accused them of this. The police went in and investigated, did a big investigation, said, "Look, man, these people, they were falsely accused." Over the next 3 decades, accounts of voodoo in New Orleans produced little evidence of any organized blood cult. A 1926 study of folk beliefs of the Southern black man, it's got another word in there I won't use, included major sections on what was called voodooism. But virtually all the sources the author found for ritual dances, snake worship ceremonies, animal sacrifice, and blood drinking came from what? Oh, the romantic, decadent books and articles published at the turn of the century, referring to events long ago, usually before the Civil War. Again, these are anti-cultists. So many of us would be attracted to that kind of literature. And we'd say, "Oh, this is legit. Oh yeah, man, did you see that crazy conspiracy going around on Twitter? Yeah, they're trying to shut it down." We fall prey to so many things that if you go back and go back and go back and we find the roots, where did this thing come from? And the left does it. I mean, it's all across the board. The left does it all the time. But so does the right. Conservatives, progressives, doesn't matter. Leftists, right-wing reactionaries, doesn't matter. Part of me just wants to say that it's just, the frailty of how we learn things mixed with this crazy desire to know, this fear, in fact, of not knowing, which is ramped up when you're talking about a foreign place, a foreign people with a foreign language doing really weird junk. That plays into all sorts of fascinations, all sorts of drives and motivations, tons of them. All right. While hoodoo might have a romantic appeal for intellectuals, and again, strange enough, intellectuals, man, they always say, "Oh yeah, we're not persuaded by the peasants' religions of Christianity. No way." And you're like, "Well, okay, why are so many of you guys into that weird Gnosticism junk? Rosicrucianism, what's up with that? You're into that junk, right? Is it Swedenborgianism? How do you pronounce that? I've read it in books. I've never just looked up to say, how do you pronounce that? A whole bunch of super smart people wrapped up in that. Universalist Unitarianism, right? Super dupe whack. Super dupe cultic. Christian Science. New Thought metaphysics. Spiritualism. They're hankering for the esoteric. They love that junk. New Age. Weird cults. So you can find, on the one hand, you can find your run-of-the-mill messianic cult of the Seventh-day Adventist and his polygamous relationship who was, 7 Vestal wives, these virgins. You can find those. I get it. But you can find a lot of this stuff too. It was viewed very differently by the aspiring urban middle classes, whose views were represented in black newspapers like the Pittsburgh Courier or the Chicago Defender. In these circles, such superstitions were at best irrelevant, at worst an embarrassment that could threaten the hard-won respectability. So you had these other more mainstream, if I can use the term, more mainstream non-anti-cult sources, publications, not nearly as sensational, but yet being more accurate to the picture, the overall picture. Saying, look, there are people who do really weird junk. I'm not sure about the go without horns part. I've never heard that. But at the same time, I'm really terribly embarrassed by all of this. And now I'm getting lumped in by a bunch of people because of what they think when they hear the word Haitian. Because of some fiction writer that was eating body parts. Traditional African American customs and folklore were brought to northern cities during the Great Migration between 1910 and 1930. Popular fascination with Haitian magic led to these domestic traditions being interpreted, of course, as voodoo. The confusion between domestic hoodoo and foreign voodoo was reinforced by Zora Neale Hurston's 1938 book, Tell My Horse. It's weird. Tell My Horse. What is that? Her study of African-derived beliefs in Haiti, and Jamaica. Though intended as a celebration of African culture, the book encouraged the idea that Black Americans were likely to be involved in savage rites. So even the well-intended person, the ethnograph, right, saying like, I traveled over there, I studied, I talked to people, but it's within a context where it's been primed and pumped for a long time. Books, fiction, right? Not able to verify or falsify. You're kind of in the wind with this. These weird esoteric origins in and of themselves of that. Not only in books, in films that portrayed itself in a more documentarian light. All this. So even at that point, you're within the context of something bad. Like way worse than what it is, and it's bad already, right? It's wicked bad. It's demonic, right? You do not want to get involved in that. It is wicked, demonic. The lesson here, that's a given, right? I don't think that there's any reason for us to go, well, is it possible? I mean, it was misrepresented. Maybe it's good. No. That's why we take a knee for Christ the King and say the act of faith. Why we say, look, I believe these and all the truths that the Catholic Church teaches, and it ain't teaching no voodoo or hoodoo. Yeah, Julia Savola. I don't know, man. That cat. Introduction to Magic. Excited to read it, to be honest. Why? Why do that? You get these hodgepodge guys. I think it's just an overreaction sometimes. I think that it's like an unnecessary overreaction to say, well, where are we going to get into that? It's like, I can see the benefit, right? Learning about archetypes and things like that, right? The way that life is flooded with different symbols and motifs, connecting back to the earth and the blood, the people, this sort of thing. I can get that. But at the same time, I'm like, there's just too many people. I used to watch, what is her name? Is it Philosophicat? Philosophicat? I don't know. Let's see. American Voodoo now became a staple of the American media. Okay. In 1932, a voodoo king was said to be based in a Florida jungle. The Voodoo King in a Florida jungle. Okay. Yeah. Everybody, we gotta go find the Voodoo King. You know what it reminds me of? Everyone, just reading it out loud for whatever reason, the first image that came to mind was Banana King. You're the Banana King, Charlie. What? You're the Banana King. The following year, a book on voodoos and obeahs juxtaposed two recent news stories. This is a real threat. This is a danger that we should be aware of. implying that they were describing related phenomena. One, from the New York Times, was headed, quote, "Sees price lists of Voodoo doctor," and describe how the police seized the advertising circulars of a Brooklyn man who sold, quote, "all sorts of love powders, wishing dust, lucky charms, and incantations." So the guy was like heading up the Love Shack, and it was a special he had of Lucky Charms. So he had Lucky Charms, right? And Lucky Charms, people say, look, you got to seize that bugger. And this is where you get into the place where in Protestant America, a lot of the things that we would have are sacramentals, in fact, and medals. All that would be Lucky Charms. They'd say, oh, you wear that? What about a scapular? We'd have to make the case. Wishing dust, love powders. Though there is no element here of an organized cult or religion, the story immediately following is headlined, "Save Child from Torture." And it tells how Cuban, quote, "voodoo worshippers" kidnapped and almost sacrificed a white toddler. Yeah. So you get in this place, right? And yeah, I'm not meaning to bust your chops, by the way, Francesco. I'm not meaning to bust your chops. Look, man, I've read multiple books within that world, right? I've been to some crazy sites to buy them too. I have. And I've talked about it before, even the book Imperium, right? Which even there was I forget which professor out of, I think in Pennsylvania, was talking about the significance of that. And I agree. I think it's one of those things. It's kind of it's a supplement, right, to the book. It works in tandem with the book On Decline of the West by Spengler. And I've been influenced in part by those ideas. Right? My view of history is kind of a mix of those. And the Augustinian notion of linear time. Such domestic stories were a gift for the authors of Pulp Fiction. In 1935, a New Orleans-based cult provided the foundation for Cornell Woolrich's short story, Music from the Big Dark. Woolrich was a highly regarded noir suspense writer, from the same tradition as Dashiell Hammett. The story concerns a band leader who enjoys huge success by appropriating voodoo music and rhythms for his nightclub act, which indicates the contemporary white interest in the exotic culture. Have you guys heard something similar to this before? I have heard it many times. Many times. In fact, I've been in discussions and debates. I haven't taken a bite of this in a long time. I actually forgot. If you want to stop being fat and you want to eat like me, awesome stuff, and you want to lose weight for real, where your wife messages you and tells you need a new picture for your business card that she's making because you've lost weight and you look real hot. Yeah, my wife said that to me today. That if you want to do that, Fat Shame to Fitness, link to the Wolfpack chat. All you got to do is DM me on Telegram. That's all I got to do. Yeah. In the comments, people are talking about, all different things that to the outsiders, of course, could sound like magic that we do. Right? But the idea of the rhythms and the beats, and it probably doesn't help in a way. In a way, it would have to get down to the cosmic rhythm of people in order to make sense of, for example, the movie Raise. Right? It's a great, is it Rise? Is it R-I-Z-E? I think it's Rise. And it's about clowning and crumping, the history of that. Yeah, I've watched it. It's actually cinematically, the cinematography is just stunning. And many scenes in that. It's, but a lot of dancing. These kids, these places, super poor out in California. Very, very, very poor. Tons of gangs, tons of gang banging and drugs and all that stuff. And there was a dude who did birthday parties and retirement parties as a clown. And he was a real popular dude, and he just started saying, look, why don't we get you dancing instead of out there, slinging drugs and stuff? Instead of gangbanging, why don't you sit there and do some clowning or some crumping? And now they have competitions and stuff. That's the kind of battles they do now, But there's a scene in there where they've got people dancing at the playground. They've got people dancing, doing their crumping, and it's really intense. And it shows the movements. And then it shows tribes in Africa, and it shows those tribes doing their dances, different ceremonial dances, and you can see similarities. You can see it. Now, I know that the reason for that was to promote something that they thought was unique or special. It wasn't saying that they learned it from that, but maybe it was inherent. But that plays in within an overall paradigm that says, look, these are voodoo beats. These are voodoo beats. Your syncopation is a voodoo beat. The reason why you like that music at the beginning of Paleo show is because of the voodoo beat. And you're like, come on, man. But you get that. You hear that. I think they work for the chant lobby. I think that's what they do. The chant and classical music lobby. That's what it is. If you're EMJ, it's for the homemade folk music lobby. Yeah. So the problem was, however, that Woolrich's description of the rituals recalls the bloodiest Haitian accounts. Animals are sacrificed and orgy ensues as dancers are, quote, lashing themselves to a frenzy, tearing at their own and each other's clothes, drawing blood with knives and fingernails, eyes rolling in ecstasy that colder races cannot know. I've seen myself some white people doing some junk that is wicked bad like that. In fact, what do you think the convulsionaries were? What do you think the convulsionaries? What do you think the convulsionaries were? The folks, right, in different parts of the world doing all sorts of crazy junk to themselves. The voodoo magician wears a death's head juju mask throughout the rituals. This is the all-powerful papaloi, a term imported from the Haitian tales. One potent theme throughout the story is that of racial subversion, as white characters are drawn into the voodoo movement. The terror of miscegenation is manipulated by the cult, who uses drugs to induce subtle skin changes in their white dupes, convincing them that they are perverting the primitive type racially as much as spiritually. The chronology of the voodoo scare does much to explain the contemporary interpretation of the Nation of Islam as a voodoo cult, as the authentic Muslim movement was emerging in exactly the years of the media frenzy that we've been talking about. And of sober academics, and this is, people can say whatever they like about the show, right? We had the survivalist guy struggling to turn a channel. We had that guy earlier complaining about it. But this right here is what I'm getting at, right? We can have a fun time. We can have a fun time. We can talk about this. It's satire. We're literally ridiculing beliefs that are just cuckoo crazy, right? Poo-poo trash nonsense. We've got all sorts of phrases for that, right? We have our own lexicon at this point. So we need to actually put it and codify it and put it into print. But it's ever changing, right? It's adapting all the time to whatever we're bringing up here. But this, if sober academics, and I would say further, sober Catholics, sober anti-cultists, could not discriminate between voodoo and Islam, why should law enforcement agencies be any more perceptive? It's intrusive. It's not just fake. It's not just fake, right? That people, when we misinterpret a group, if you're accurate with a group that you disagree with, we did it back going to the Montanists, the Donatists, we did it with the Corinthian letters, we did it with the Jansenists, the Quietists, we did it with the mouth breathers, we did it with them, the family of love, the Quakers, the Shakers, the Methodists, the Revivalists, the Snake Handlers, the Word of Faith community, over and over and over. And of course, every group that we've mentioned thus far in here, if you are accurate in your description about them, if you refrain from the sensationalism of stuff that, if you really look at it, it finds its roots are back in fiction, oftentimes written by people who A, don't know what they're talking about, and B, while writing, may be nibbling on some human flesh. Instead, if you just talk accurately, number one, your apologetic and witness is going to be profoundly more effective. And number two, you're actually going to be sticking with the truth. And it matters. And it's bad enough as it is, but it actually lessens your criticism of that. Think about this. If we go and we are talking to a Protestant who is a Baptist, and we say, well, you believe in sacraments, you believe in infant baptism, and you bring up a whole bunch of stuff that they don't believe in. Or you bring up stuff that would maybe fit a charismatic, but not somebody else. If you decide to go that route, they're going to look at you like you don't even know what you're talking about. Because in reality, guess what? You would not know what you are talking about. And if they can judge you that way and say, look, don't we do enough weird things with the chickens and the buns? Don't we do enough weird stuff? Haven't you seen legit stuff that we've done? That if you stick with that, you'd have plenty of ammunition. You'd have more than enough. So there's no reason to fall prey to these peddlers of fiction. There's no reason for that. And there is a reason why it is important when you hear something from somebody you like about a group that you've never heard of or you don't know, that you really ought to go and find out what sources are they using. I am choosing sources that aren't even of my position entirely. I did that with Kingdom of the Cults to say, look, the sources in that alone, the sources are reputable. The interpretation of certain things and the apologetic method of Walter Martin, that's neither here nor there to me because I can adapt to that in real time. I've read the book a bunch of times. That's not even a problem. The problem is, what am I building off of? Are there sources? What's the end of the book like? Where are they finding it? And the standard for me was set with Enthusiasm by Knox. It was set because in that book he was reading the notes of the Inquisitors themselves, the diaries of those involved. He read the entirety of the diaries for John Wesley. Do you know how ridiculous that actually is? But he did it. And not just for himself. He's not just saying, well, I just would like to know. That would be neat. But to say, how can I make my witness and the witness of those who benefit from my work more profound and effective? Because you have a limited time. You have a limited time, not just in your life, but in that moment of encounter with people outside of the faith. And if you're able to go to them and you know what they believe, you know their practices, you know their faith, you're equipped in a way, even that you just have a basic understanding of it, you are going to be more effective because you're going to know where to shoot the target. It's not going to be like a game of Battleship where you got to guess where they are. I'm telling you right now, we're laying out the maps. We're giving you the coordinates. Now blast those missiles. Go, go, go. Deconstruct. Construct contra error. Provide proof. Lead them to the faith. Know your sources. Know the bias at play in everybody. Know the kind of prejudices that may in fact be haunting us. Understand the role of the imagination, the role of suspended disbelief, the impact that not having the time or maybe even the skill to go too deep into a lot of these things, just accept that can affect it. And if you find somebody who's into that sort of a thing, now you've got a show that you'd be able to watch. And more importantly, okay, a show that is not just going through an academic book. This is written, by the way, distinguished professor of history and religious studies at Pennsylvania State University, Philip Jenkins. The guy's not a joke. Washington Post Book World. Jenkins possesses the virtue of being able to perceive new and unusual religious sects on their own terms, not through the frequently distorted mirror in which they've been viewed in popular writings for at least a century. you're able to go through this book bit by bit, and all the while to be able to laugh too. To be able to laugh, to be able to think, to be able to chat in that comment section, to be able to catch up with people in the wolf pack, and to be able to remember because the goofy story is told, and you came out with a little bit something more because you learned that Chinese food is in fact American. It's what you learned. It's what you learned. I love this show. I love this show, and I'm so grateful for everybody who tunes in. And I just have to imagine that this is helpful in a way that we can go to better understand not just these other groups, not just these weird things. Otherwise, it'd be a weird kind of fascination or fetish. It's not that. It's about equipping ourselves to be prepared to understand that sometimes things that impacted us, we learned this with New Thought Metaphysics. Some of the things that we're surrounded by came from places we would have never imagined, from people we'd never heard of, beliefs we've never seen, institutions that are long gone, and yet they echo in time, and in some ways, sometimes even affecting things that we just take for granted as being truly Catholic when they're not. But you have to be able to distinguish and divide. You must. Yeah, you must. All right, speaking of must, I really encourage you, if you like this show, if you love this show, if you have a good time, and if you love all the stuff that we do as a group here, as an apostolate, over on Telegram, it's a lot. We do a lot every single day, even just connecting with the regular folks, being open to DMs, being open to phone calls. I spend an enormous amount of time, and eventually I'll need help, right? Eventually, I'm pushing it to the limit now to say, I want to connect. If someone reaches out to me and they've got a question, if they've got a concern, if they're looking for clarification, a dude asked me just a couple days ago, or 3 or 4 days ago, he said, look, I don't know, I'm interested in learning more about Catholic presuppositionalism, but I don't know where to begin with that with your stuff. I created a table of contents, and a table of contents for almost every series I've done. Almost. We're working on it still. But we put them in an order. We give them titles that make it easy to know what it is and what it's about. And then we make a time-stamped link that takes you to the beginning, so it skips over the stuff at the beginning of the show. I like doing that, but that's more for the live show, right? But the rest of it, we've made sure you can skip over. But that took time, going each one, and making sure that we laid it out great and shared it all over. You can find all of that over at the Telegram Wolfpack channel. Link in the description below. But if you love all this stuff and you want to see it keep going, right? I'll always do this for as long as I possibly can. But it does help if you check out what we do, if you check out Patreon, knowing that all of the work that we do isn't even on Patreon. I don't want to play with that. I don't want them ever to take it away. So I do it elsewhere. And if you'd like to meet me at that elsewhere, I'm actually leaving right now and going over to the live chat. So I'll see you over there. Telegram, description below. Till next time, never give up. Keep on smiling. Memento mori.
I wanted to make people dream bigger thoughts.